Nobody saw it coming, not even Jim Jones, the Dipset veteran and harem legend who, now cuffed and surrounded by flashing lights, was found dead in the midst of a full-fledged drug inquiry. It looked ridiculous, yet the sirens and police scanners were blaring, and the shaky, raw footage showed the rapper outside a dimly lit warehouse in what investigators claim a proved cocaine exchange within minutes. Is this a sit-up? Was he framed? What's going on? The streets of Harlem were rife with speculation as hip-hop fans across the globe tried to make sense of it. But nothing rocked the internet more than what happened next. Camron, Jim's longtime friend, brother-in-arms, and Dipset co-founder went missing. His look spoke it all. The delay, the rigidity in his jaw, the tightness in his eyes. It wasn't only betrayal, but also sadness. And when he finally spoke, the real drama started. But since Camron didn't defend him, didn't deny it, and just said one thing you don't know, half the internet froze, and so many questions remain. Was this years in the making, or the final break in a fraternity founded on loyalty? The real story is tougher than anybody expected. The streets of Harlem seemed colder under the dark, cloudy sky. Unlike normal, when news traveled quickly that Jim Jones had been arrested in connection with the cocaine trade, most individuals first refused to believe it. Could the Dipset legend, who had risen from the projects to international recognition, be involved in something so organized? Everyone expected the typical rumors and petty online debates, but this time there was no denying that the blurry tape leaked within minutes, and Jim's inner circle's silence only fueled the frenzy. The footage was raw and stark, beginning with a shaky handheld shot. Jim stood beside a sleek black sub in the lot of a dilapidated warehouse, his shadow emphasized by a solitary roadway, most likely captured on the phone of a nearby pedestrian or security guard. Like the guy he was meeting had a black hoodie face obscured, but the transaction was obvious, a little present passed hand to hand. Witnesses heard a siren and the second officer surrounded the area, their credentials glinting as they barked directions. The cloaked man vanished into the darkness, leaving Jim with little choice but to raise his hands and stare directly into the camera, as if daring the world to condemn him. Within seconds, the internet did what it always does, and social media sites lit up with, "Is this real?" Someone said, "Did they frame him?" Camron, Jim's longtime partner and friend, was the person everyone wanted to hear from the most. On Reddit, someone asked if this was a power move by rival crews, an inside operation coordinated by the FI, or if Jim had reverted to old habits, and the speculation was endless. Kept silent for hours, his avoidance of response nearly made the matter worse. Was he ashamed, complicit, or honestly in the dark following? And critics alike clamored for a comment. So late that night, Camron went live on his private social account. Hundreds tuned in almost instantly, and there was no Camron sat alone in a darkly lit room with a poem in hand, the only sound being distant sirens. There was no dazzling background or loud soundtrack. Camron shattered the hush, booming across the city as a reminder of the mayhem developing after what felt like a lifetime. "Y'all don't know the half," he said quietly as heavy responses came in. People urged him to elaborate to defend his sister and provide context. But Camron only stared at the camera, his eyes indicating fury, disappointment, and deeper deceit. Rumors began to circulate about what he meant, with some insiders muttering that Camron had sought to warn Jim months before, while others felt Cam had evidence of a larger scheme. One thing was certain, viewers were hanging on every word, seeking clarity amid a storm of speculation. Meanwhile, local reporters Jim was charged with distribution and intent to distribute an undisclosed prohibited narcotic, according to sources stationed outside the precinct. Had been following him for weeks, using surveillance images, phone data, and undercover informants to sketch out a network that stretched from New York to Atlanta. The chemicals involved were meant to be high-end. Designer pills are not the conventional street narcotics. Rumors in law enforcement circles indicated that these pills might fetch thousands of dollars each dose, leaving Jim Jones with some bad marks while others fled. News vans lined the street with their satellite antennae directed skyward that tour deals kept falling through. When new album sales collapsed, He became desperate and began transferring favors. The phrase moving favors quickly became a meme, and some felt it was code for establishing connections. Years ago, photos revealed individuals selling illegal substances for cash. Jim attended private events with people who are now known to law enforcement, and each image was thoroughly scrutinized. Recently, a leaked text message between Jim and an unknown individual surfaced. The conversation was brief, but did you include contact information? Jim said, just stay. Silence, no context, no timestamp, only intriguing proof that something clandestine had been brewing, and a single text sent shockwaves around the internet. Community's conspiracy theorists believe that the government was targeting and framing high-profile rappers. Doubters, for example, used the phrasing as evidence of a violation. Jules Santana, another Dipset colleague, said that the barrier between fact and fiction became blurred as soon as the video became viral. Adding to the intrigue, he posted an old photo of himself with Jim and Camron with the caption "Loyalty Cuts Deep." Fans debated whether it was a sign of unity or a covert criticism of Jim's apparent betrayal, and uncertainty fueled the fire, with hashtags like #TeamJules and #WearCam trending across platforms amid the digital mayhem. A nightclub hosted a vigil for Jim, with attendees gathered under flashing neon lights. Wearing Dipset t-shirts and sweatshirts with Jim's face printed on them, the atmosphere was one of remembrance. During the rally, a mural artist stood at an easel painting a portrait of Jim in jail. The words "Free my brother" appeared in huge letters underneath parallel fans. I read through Jim's recent lyrics, seeking for hidden signals in minds that were innocent but took on new significance. I've been going through shadows, which suddenly seemed like a confession, and every line became food. Vloggers and podcasters disputed over the timeline of events extensively. According to sources close to the investigation, prosecutors are evidently preparing a case that goes beyond Jim's possible identification. Co-conspirators and whistleblowers have revealed that subpoenas have been sent to cast members of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta and other reality shows in search of financial papers and communications that expose Atlanta links. Jim's detention has just added to the mystery. Could this be part of a larger network crackdown? Camron's voice remained the wild card after his first performance, and he left. Fans on social media suspected that he was negotiating behind the scenes. His silence represented a schism between him and Jim. A few hours later, he wrote his tale includes an unusual image of two broken chains with no accompanying speculation. Went into overdrive. Was he implying a break from the gym or a future freedom? According to reports, Rashida, a close friend and neighbor, approached Jim hours before his arrest and encouraged him to give up that lifestyle. When contacted, he allegedly expressed confidence that the risk was worthwhile. Rashida's team issued a statement expressing concern and urged people to avoid jumping to conclusions. A properly prepared response did little to allay concerns. As darkness descended over Harlem once again, a second video emerged from an anonymous account, this time from inside the warehouse and including Jim. While counting heaps of cash on a metal table before tucking something into a pocket, the camera pans up to see Camron, a familiar figure resting against the wall, with half of his face obscured by darkness. Jim, illuminated by a flickering bow, glanced at him and nodded, as if requesting permission. Camron moved closer and said, "Someone spoke something inaudible before walking away." Jim began packing, and the film shut off. The story sent shockwaves beyond Harlem. If Camron had genuinely been there, even under the cover of friendship, suspicions about his participation emerged. Was he more than a passive spectator, complicit, or, according to the individual who set Jim up, the online outrage reached a fever pitch as hip-hop journalists, fan sites, and pundits rushed to scrutinize the recording, which is where part one ends. When the second video appeared and changed everything, it wasn't just Jim Jones' narrative anymore, it was Camron's story as well. And the true extent of the issue was just beginning to surface under the flickering ball and the stunned silence that followed the second. By now, the video's effect had extended across the hip-hop world. On Harlem streets, Jim's was already explosive, and it seemed like it was about to explode. Martinez strolled backstage as his manager, Tony 50/50, sat in a circle of horror. Martinez's phone rang incessantly with calls from lawyers, promoters, and anxious castmates at a little club where Jim was scheduled to speak later that night. He finally answered, one voice tight, "Yes, I realize we need no." "He's not talking yet." "Yes, I have directed everyone to stand down." He hung up. Jim collapsed into a chair, head in his hands, wondering what the heck he got himself into. Isla, Jim's longtime hairdresser, waited uncomfortably as she ran his fingers through her braids and declared he was clean. Martinez looked up. His eyes were wide, and there were no paper trails or formal indictments yet. But with the video showing Cam, this is huge. Camron's staff scrambled to control the narrative, gathering a small group of aides and publicists in a cramped room above a record store in Bedford-Stuyvesant. One of them, Jasmine, looked up the most recent social media data on her laptop. The last live had 2 million views in 50 minutes, and the comments were insane. Snitching, did he set him up? Where is his loyalty? She scrolled, her eyes widening. If we don't get ahead of this, Cam's career is toast. A more experienced publicist, Antonio. We can't just spin it because people saw him there. We need context. To verify where he was before and after, we need a statement from Jim and, more importantly, Cam. Cam was nowhere to be found, and his phone went straight to voicemail. Social media accounts remained silent, and word circulated that he had checked himself into a private retreat upstate, known as a creative recharge, where he was allegedly gathering data. According to an anonymous officer in the drugs division, the FI was monitoring a ring that used celebrities. Sources verified an expanded investigation, which may have made him question his own position in law enforcement. They used encrypted messaging services to covertly sell designer drugs known as nightmares. Jim's identity was revealed only when undercover officers videotaped him. During repeated encounters in New York and Atlanta, the footage showed Jim passing off the box outside the warehouse was just the beginning. Detectives discovered security video of him entering a hotel room in Atlanta with 2 guys who were later jailed on narcotics charges. Phone records show that he arrived at exactly 217 a.m. As the chief agent, I informed reporters, although this is not a celebrity witch hunt, we have significant evidence to suggest higher-level involvement. Rashida received a late-night call from her cousin Channel, who worked in radio marketing, asking for your feedback on every station. Rashida rubbed her eyes and spoke in a husky voice. "I'm not Jim, but he's like a brother to me, and Pam is like family to me, and I can't just throw them out like that." The channel immediately stated that the second video is on every morning. Show they're suggesting he knew about it, and you're covering it for him. Rashida, slamming the phone down, her heart pounding, she flipped on the morning news and watched the headlines sink into drama. Camron's royals questioned after rapper's arrest. A banner came on the TV. A photo of Jim detained and scowling appears adjacent to a grandmother still of Cam leaning. Rashida disagreed with Jim, who was torn between loyalty and self-preservation. Rashida noted a calm, measured tone as he talked. Her next option is to keep silent and risk being implicated, or to speak out and risk alienating 2 of her closest friends. The conflict is broader than any of us. We must protect the family while still respecting the truth. If Cam is in that video, he deserves an explanation. Conspiracy theorists on Reddit have pulled together timeframes from event schedules and hotel check-ins and interview dates. One popular thread stated that Jim and Cam had used industry exhibitions as cover for meetings with the trafficking network, while another claimed a cryptic phrase in the current Jim Jones song, "I Move Silently Through the Night," was an admission of guilt on Twitter by one user at Street Team. Wrote, "If Cam's commitment was sincere, he'd stand up for G. This silence says volumes." Another user lashed back, saying he's not going to throw his brother under the bus while waiting for the truth. Inside, Dave Swift was rehearsing his morning show in the city's best studios, and he queued up audio recordings of Jim's arrest announcement. Cams, you won't know the half-lived Rashida's solemn speech and select police news conference clips intended to throw them at events while bearing the weight of family. She stepped onto the improvised stage outside the precinct, stroking her brow with shaky fingertips before confronting the blazing lamps and eager expressions. A group of journalists scrambled for position microphones. I've been asked whether I was aware of any of this, and the answer is no, not until I saw it for myself. Jim Jones told me that he was working on new music, and I trusted him like family murmurs rippled across the room. One cameraman said, "Are you covering for him?" Rashida's eyelids fluttered with anguish. "I'm hiding up the truth. If he is guilty, I will be the first to admit it later that day." In a packed conference room at Dipset, records attorneys and counselors examined evidence packages, which included photographs of the 2 leaked videos. Security cameras inside the warehouse captured hotel room footage from Atlanta, as well as printouts of Jim's principal lawyer, Marissa Flores, who leaned over the table and read a damaging letter. "We need to dig holes in the prosecution's timetable," she added, scratching her temples. On other moments, the video may be circumstantial. One investigator, staring at phone alerts, noted they'll want to separate the cases. Atlanta bargains separate from the warehouse meeting. "We must establish that these points are linked." The team agreed, but the dread was palpable. A buddy scoffed. "We're up against a public spectacle, and the jury pool includes Camron, who appeared in the evening and supplied a little audio clip. On his verified account, "I've always stood up for my family and am gathering information. Please be patient." It was just 30 seconds, but it sparked new disagreement among fans. There were 2 camps, those who saw Cam's silence as unity and others who saw it as complicity. Hashtags shifted between hashtag Cam for clarification and hashtag Cam for Jones. In the meanwhile, men sat at home, scrolling through the turmoil. When I reached Rashida, she responded with a fatigued voice, "They're tearing me apart. I'm trying to stand out for the truth, but they won't let me." Mink exhales quietly. "You did what you needed to do, honey. Let the attorneys handle the rest. Keep your head up." He came to a halt, but look behind you. As part of damage control, Dipset's brand manager planned a meeting with Jim's core team, longtime fans, street influencers, and local leaders. The event was held at a storefront church that had been turned into an event facility on 125th. Street posters for Dipset Records hung above a small stage with a single chair. Volunteers brought out bottled water and banners with the words "Support if you believe in redemption" printed in bold letters. After an hour of impassioned disagreement, a guest speaker, a well-known community elder, took the microphone. "We all know that mistakes happen, but we also know that atonement is possible. Let us come together to support someone who has already uplifted our city. Let us exhibit kindness." Applause broke out, but doubt remained in the air as a cheeky local blogger mumbled into a live stream microphone. A tabloid outlet said that applause does not pay for legal expenditures abroad. Viewers had spotted Camron on surveillance footage entering the warehouse 2 nights before his arrest, and in response, Camron's spokeswoman said that Mr. Camron complied perfectly. "Any other view is inappropriate when it comes to law enforcement. He believes in justice. We'll deal with these lies in due course." But despite the vow, online conversation has only intensified with phony accounts. In the middle of the public anger, Jim's family gathered in a small uptown apartment. His mother, aunt, and 2 younger sisters crowded around a laptop. During live broadcast, Jim's mother's nostrils flared, shouting, "They treat he behaved like a criminal." His aunt sniffled. "He's always been bothersome, and I'm concerned about him." Sister, with tears in her eyes, said, "I don't want to watch any longer." They turned off the stream and sat quietly, the scandal crushing their home, while back in the courtroom. Complex prosecutors prepared their opening statements for the preliminary hearing. Special Agent Robert Hill Cruz reviewed his case file. "We have sworn testimony from the hooded man who fled that night and recognized Jim. Phone records link him to the Atlanta suspects, and we have the texts. Beyond a reasonable doubt," his buddy said, "we'll fight for an early indictment." Send a message that celebrities are not above the law. Outside activists arrived to demand justice for Jim. While up for her channel, she approached a random attendee and said, "What are your thoughts? Is Jim guilty?" The woman paused. "I'm not sure, but everyone is attempting to use this. Nobody is discussing the real issue, the drugs that are causing damage to our children. It doesn't matter who sold them. We lost sight of the bigger picture." Tasha agreed. That night, Jim Jones transformed the conversation into a critique of social media exaggeration. In his first public appearance since his arrest, he stood on a low-rise stage at a community engagement program accompanied by mentors and young groups, dressed in simple black tee and jeans. He seemed exhausted, and the audience went silent. I raised my hand to greet everyone and thank them for coming. I will not lie to you. This is terrible, but I am not here to advocate innocence or guilt. I'm here to tell you that I love you and that I'm fighting. A young admirer shouted, "We got you, Uncle Jim." Others cried out in solidarity backstage as Jim faced reporters, taking a deep breath and saying, "Yes, I was there. That warehouse, yes. I met that person, but you don't understand why, which I'll explain." Cameras flashed in front of the judge. "Until then, I remain innocent," the reporter queried. Jim tightened his mouth when he heard about the alleged designer medications. "They paint me with names. Don't even recognize me. Give me time. Give me a chance." As midnight approached, the crisis showed no signs of slowing. With the third video clip disclosed, Jim reportedly recorded a voice message to Cam days before the incident. Although the audio was distorted, the sentences were, "I received the box. Please let me know when you will relocate it." The video has abruptly ended. Viewers wondered whether this was proof of a conspiracy or just another digital distraction. XV agents had an unofficial podcast where they discussed every aspect of conjecture. Callers discussed conspiracies, wiretap informants, and the possibility of a plea deal. Theories vary from links to international cardos to insider dealings by rival artists. Every news story sparked a news storm, and two names stood out the most: Jim Jones and Camron, whose relationship had previously been lauded as calm. Part 2 had revealed secrets and betrayals, and now the destiny of Hop royalty was in the balance. In Part 3, shifting allegiances blurred the distinction between right and wrong. The struggle for truth and loyalty raged on as the world waited with bated breath for the next bombshell. The courtroom was abuzz with apprehension as the preliminary hearing started the next morning. Rows of chairs were jammed with spectators, journalists, and curious onlookers. Jim Jones sat at the defense table, flanked by his attorneys, gaze fixed. The prosecutor walked down the aisle and handed the charges. Aimed to transport a prohibited narcotic over state lines, supported and embedded by an accomplice specified only Tablac. The surveillance operation that led to Jim's arrest, weeks of wiretaps, covered buys, and nocturnal stakeouts. He revealed the shaky warehouse footage, the Atlanta hotel tape, and the leaked text messages. His voice stayed calm, but each detail elicited gasps from the room. He concluded with Cruz's allegation that the data demonstrates a pattern of transactions that hint to a larger distribution network. Sat down, whispering filled the room, and Flores, Jim's lawyer, rose up to begin her rebuttal. She spoke with controlled composure, acknowledging certain facts but rejecting their relevance. The government's case is mainly based on speculation and circumstantial video. She said that there was no solid evidence that the drug exchange was illegal, and there were no lab results or chain of custody. Proves my client's right to the presumption of innocence outside. The news media swarmed the courts like vultures, with anchors reporting live and flashing headlines predicting the dip hit dynasty's demise. Does loyalty withstand the scandal? The hashtag Jones shearing trended. Fans nationwide on social media divided into two groups. Those who wanted Speedy later that day, in a dimly lit conference room of Jim's law company, Flores and her colleagues looked through discovery objects buried beneath papers. The discovery of phone records was a surprise, an unredacted surveillance report identifying a vital witness who had not yet been identified. The report, which identified T.B. Black by his real name, Terrence Tony, to Williams, coupled with his cooperation agreement, seemed to indicate that testimony would be forthcoming. This revelation brought Jim and Camron together multiple times. She cleaned her forehead and leaned back, breathing deeply. "We have to call this into doubt," she said, adding that if the witness is offered mercy, his credibility is jeopardized. "We need to file a request to..." She began compiling the necessary documentation, but Camron seemed curiously absent. Rumors circulated that he had been summoned for questioning as a material witness, but his attorneys denied this, claiming that he was just assisting the investigation. Circulated under his name, and I fully cooperated with the police. "I'm looking forward to sharing my side of the timing seemed perfect, but Voigt's online followers wondered whether his silence was a ploy or a sign of deeper involvement. Back on the streets, a makeshift shrine to Jim had turned into a protest camp. Supporters brought tents, speakers, and boomboxes with old Dipset music, alleging Jim was being scapegoated. While true kingpins were released, others accused them of glorifying a drug lifestyle that hurts their communities. A short scuffle between opposing parties prompted police intervention. To intervene in the courts, a surprise witness was called. Lila Jim, the defense stylist, took the stand with difficulty, dressed in a simple outfit. Under oath, she testified she saw Jim in his studio. On the night of the warehouse meeting, he worked on artwork for his next album, accompanied by receipts and timestamp photographs. The narrative questioned the prosecution's timeline, implying that the tape may have been doctored or misquoted. She spoke calmly about her devotion to Jim Clear, garnering applause and skeptical voices. Flores stepped up again to conclude the defense's case as Waya walked away. She urged with the court to consider T. Black's discrepancies and questionable dependability, and she created a picture of a male. Rather of directing a criminal organization, she attempted to rehabilitate his career. According to the statute of doubt, if there is a reasonable question, it must be found in favor of the defendant. The judge paused to go over his notes, set a date for a formal arraignment, and warned both sides that evidence was still being reviewed. Adding that the case had significance, he adjourned. A heavy reporters crowded the defense table, demanding answers. Jim offered a brief nod, but Flores extended her hand, underlining her client's right to remain silent. Rashida invited Mink and a few close pals to her apartment that evening. The tone was negative. Every time Jim raised his hands throughout the hearing, I saw bits on a little television screen. Rashida became frightened and turned to face the men VCs. "I don't know how he'll get through this," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We are here for him. We will fight this outside Cameron's courtrooms." Cam's spokesperson said that he would make a public appearance the following day with an exclusive interview on a major network. Cam's promotional picture suggested that he would clear the air and reveal the mysterious tale, which both fans and critics were curious about. Whether he'd take the opportunity to defend Jim, shift blame, or reveal shocking new information.